Today we begin our exploration of a deeply emotional story titled A Fractured Legacy. This narrative dives into the complexities of family relationships, the weight of expectations, and the painful reality of betrayal. It is a poignant examination of a father-daughter relationship strained by past hurts, unresolved conflicts, and the existential struggle for love and acceptance. Arthur Hayes is a recently retired architect in his late 50s. After dedicating his life to his career, he now finds himself at a crossroads, yearning to reconnect with his only daughter, Chloe. In a moment of vulnerability, he commits to fully financing her wedding to Owen, believing this act of generosity might heal the lingering rifts in their relationship. For Arthur, this is more than just a financial arrangement. It represents a final chance to mend what has been broken. The wedding is not only a celebration of Chloe's future, but also a hope for a brighter, reconciled relationship between father and daughter. 3 weeks before the wedding, Arthur, filled with anticipation, places a call to Dominic, the wedding planner. He requests the finalized guest list, eager to personally extend invitations to close family friends and former colleagues who had played pivotal roles in his life. It is a small gesture that symbolizes his desire for connection, both with the people of his past and with Chloe. Yet, as he speaks to Dominic, he senses a palpable hesitation on the other end of the line. Dominic's discomfort soon becomes evident. Reluctantly, he reveals that Chloe has specifically instructed him not to share the guest list with either Arthur or Ilara, Arthur's wife. A chill runs through Arthur as he processes Dominic's words, a stark contrast to the warmth he hoped to experience while discussing the upcoming wedding. The confirmation of his exclusion from such a monumental event hits Arthur like a tidal wave, crashing over his hopes and dreams of reconciliation. With each detail Dominic shares, the weight of betrayal sinks deeper into Arthur's heart. The final blow comes in the form of an email from Dominic, formal and cold. It contains a time-stamped directive from Chloe. Arthur and Ilara are not permitted entry to the venue under any circumstances. The words seem to pierce through Arthur's very being, an emotional wound that feels both raw and irrevocable. In this moment, disbelief morphs into profound hurt, bubbling beneath the surface like molten lava. Arthur finds himself grappling with a myriad of emotions, confusion, anger, sadness, until finally it crystallizes into a quiet, simmering fury. Each unanswered call to Chloe echoes in his mind. Each text message sent into the void with no response is a relentless reminder of the chasm that has formed between them. Determined to confront the source of his pain, Arthur drives to Chloe's trendy loft apartment in Portland. As he approaches, he cannot help but feel a mix of trepidation and hope. He fantasizes that this confrontation might lead to understanding and healing, a chance to mend what has long been broken. However, what he finds when he arrives is far from the resolution he yearns for. When Chloe opens the door, her nonchalance is shocking. There is no warmth, no recognition of the anguish Arthur feels. Instead, she seems almost amused by his presence. "Oh, so you found out?" she replies dismissively. "Honestly, it saves everyone a lot of awkwardness. I will send you a link to the photo album if it turns out okay." Her words cut like daggers, severing the last remaining threads of connection between them. With his voice trembling under the weight of his emotions, Arthur seeks understanding. "What could I have possibly done to warrant such a cruel and humiliating exclusion from my own daughter's milestone event?" he implores, desperate for a glimpse beneath Chloe's hardened exterior. Instead of the compassion he hopes for, Arthur is met with a familiar tirade filled with resentment and bitterness. Chloe identifies her father's unwavering support for her mother, Ilara, accusing Arthur of always picking Ilara's side and never truly supporting my artistic vision. Each accusation strikes like a thunderbolt, igniting old wounds that Arthur believed were healed. He recalls the past with aching clarity, a moment when he had to discipline her at a family gathering, an event that had shattered her sense of trust. Through teary eyes, Arthur reminds her of his sacrifices. The countless hours spent finding her a place in a competitive design school, the financial aid for her stints in rehabilitation, and his unwavering belief in her potential. But Chloe remains unmoved, hardening her heart against the genuine love he has shown her over the years. "You owe me a life of comfort and freedom," she declares, an accusation that feels like a final nail in the coffin of their relationship. When Arthur finally departs, he carries a profound sense of devastation and loss. The confrontation has left its mark, a haunting echo of what could have been. As he returns to their quiet suburban home in Oregon, he feels the gulf between them grow wider, an impassable chasm filled with unspoken words and unresolved pain. Ilara, his steadfast wife, senses Arthur's turmoil. As she offers comfort, her usually calm demeanor is replaced by an unexpected resolve, urging Arthur to take decisive action in the face of Chloe's flagrant disregard for their relationship. Yet how does one navigate the wreckage of a fractured legacy? As Arthur reflects on the heartbreaking events that have unfolded, he must confront not just the betrayal from his daughter but the impact of his own decisions and the painful truth that love does not always guarantee forgiveness. The story unfolds, and so begins the journey toward understanding and reconciliation, even amid the heavy shadows of resentment and despair. Arthur Hayes sat in his car, gripping the steering wheel as he navigated the streets of Portland. Each mile felt heavier than the last, his heart pounding in his chest as a mix of emotions roiled within him. It had been only hours since the revelation that shattered his world, that his daughter Chloe had deliberately excluded him and his wife Alara from her wedding. He felt a tempest of disbelief, hurt and simmering fury as he pulled up to her trendy loft apartment, a place that once felt like home but now seemed like a fortress of estrangement. As he parked and stepped outside, the chill in the air was nothing compared to the ice forming around their relationship. He could visualize the vibrant memories of Chloe's childhood, a time when laughter filled their home, and he still believed in the possibility of reconciliation. But now those memories felt distant, eclipsed by today's heart-wrenching betrayal. Did he truly deserve this? Questions flooded his mind as he ascended the steps to her residence. When Chloe finally opened the door, Arthur was taken aback by her casual demeanor. She stood there in her trendy clothes, her hair styled to perfection, but the warmth that had once radiated from her was conspicuously absent. It struck him that she seemed almost amused, as if watching a play unfold that had no bearing on her. "Oh, so you found out," she replied dismissively, her tone almost flippant. "Honestly, it saves everyone a lot of awkwardness. I will send you a link to the photo album if it turns out okay." Those words, delivered with a sense of entitlement, cut deeper than any blade. Arthur felt his stomach twist in knots. Here was his daughter standing near a threshold she had drawn in the sand, and yet she appeared wholly unaffected by his pain. What could I have possibly done to warrant such a cruel and humiliating exclusion from my own daughter's milestone event? His voice trembled, the emotions spilling out like a fragile dam threatening to burst. Chloe crossed her arms, and the dismissive look in her eyes told Arthur that her heart was shielded by walls that he had not anticipated. "You always pick Alara's side," she retorted sharply, her voice ringing with old grievances. "You never truly supported my artistic vision." With each accusation, resentment dripped from her words, and it felt as though the years of misunderstandings and disappointments had crystallized into this one moment of confrontation. "Chloe," he implored, tears brimming in his eyes, "I fought for you. I put you through design school after everything you went through. I spent years helping you, making sacrifices. I thought that was love. That was support." As the floodgates opened, he recalled the countless times he had stood by her side, the chaotic nights, the private behavioral rehab stints, the heavy financial burdens he had borne, hoping she might find her path. But his efforts appeared to fall on deaf ears. Chloe scoffed at his claims, as though her heart had turned into stone against her father's love. "You owe me a life of comfort and freedom," she shot back, her voice icy. "If you had truly believed in me, you would have done more." The words hung in the air between them like a specter twisting the knife even deeper. His heart sank as he realized that the pleas of a father who had sacrificed so much were met, not with understanding or compassion, but with bitterness and resentment. The confrontation spiraled into chaos, with Chloe demanding that he leave her apartment, her demeanor cold and utterly unwilling to see the truth of her father's intentions. The door slammed shut in his face, and with it the remnants of his hopes for reconciliation, and the irony of having sacrificed so much just to be met with blatant dismissal only deepened his despair. Arthur staggered back to his car, each step feeling like a weight added to his already burdened soul. He felt shattered, the fragments of his dreams, his identity as a father, scattered across the unforgiving pavement. How had it come to this? Where had he gone wrong? Did love not shield him from the pain? The questions echoed through his mind, filling him with a deep-seated sorrow that he feared would consume him. When he finally got home, Alara was there, the warmth of her presence like a candle flickering in a dark room. Normally, her gentle demeanor was a source of comfort, but tonight she could sense the storm that had enveloped Arthur. "What happened?" she asked quietly, her concern palpable. "Chloe has drawn a line in the sand," he murmured, his heart heavy with the weight of his words. "I confronted her, and she refused to see how much I have done for her. It was as if I had become a stranger in her life." He relayed the painful confrontation, each word making the hurt he felt more tangible. Alara listened deeply, her eyes reflecting sadness but also a flicker of resolve. "Arthur, you know this behavior is not acceptable. You cannot let her use your generosity to manipulate and punish you." Her gentle conviction, usually a calming force, now ignited a spark within Arthur. Perhaps Alara was right. This was a moment that demanded action, not just for himself but for Chloe as well. Driven by a sense of loss and determination, Arthur made a choice. He would no longer be her safety net, her emotional ATM. It was time to take a stand, tears tucked away for moments when he could reconcile the love he felt for her alongside the hurt she had caused. The difficult decision took hold of him. He would cancel the wedding arrangements. The price, non-refundable deposits, was now a necessary loss for a lesson that Chloe might finally need to learn. In that moment, fortified by Alara's presence and her unwavering support, Arthur began to embrace the painful reality that perhaps love sometimes required tough love, even if it meant breaking his own heart in the process. An overwhelming resolve washed over him. He would give Chloe the space to confront the consequences of her actions, no matter how devastating that choice felt. After all, sometimes the most profound forms of love are those delivered through hard truths, not just sweetened words. As the sun began to set on a quiet suburban street, Arthur Hayes stood in the living room of his home, grappling with the emotional fallout of his confrontation with Chloe. Shadows danced across the walls, reflecting the turmoil within him, a mix of sorrow, anger, and the heavy weight of disappointment. After the tumultuous exchange with his daughter, he felt an unbearable sense of loss, as if not even the comforting embrace of suburban normalcy could shield him from the pain of their fractured relationship. Alara, his wife, entered the room with quiet grace, her usual calm demeanor tinged with worry as she picked up on Arthur's distress. The two had weathered many storms together, but this felt different, more personal and piercing. It was not just the impending cancellation of Chloe's wedding, it was the rupture of their father-daughter bond, an emotional tether that Arthur had hoped would flourish in the warmth of familial love. Yet here they were, standing on the precipice of heartbreak, with Chloe resolutely rejecting him. "What will you do now?" Alara asked softly, her voice barely a whisper above the tension in the room. She approached Arthur, placing a gentle hand on his arm to steady him. "You cannot allow her to treat you like this." Arthur turned towards her, the pain evident in his eyes. "I am at a loss. I do not understand how it has come to this," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "I thought my willingness to support her would be enough, to show her that I care, to guide her. But it feels as if every effort I made has backfired." Alara nodded solemnly, understanding the nuances of parental love, but also recognizing the dangerous territory of enabling. "Arthur, enabling her entitlement will only prolong the pain for both of you. You need to set boundaries. It is okay to walk away, even if it hurts." The sharp clarity of her words began to cut through the fog of his despair. Arthur's heart raced as he mulled over her suggestion. Was he, in his attempts to play the role of a supportive father, merely contributing to Chloe's downfall? He had sacrificed so much for her, a life of comfort, financial support, and countless opportunities to help her succeed. Yet each gesture seemed to be met with scorn. Perhaps it was time to turn the tides. It was time for Chloe to face the consequences of her choices. With a newfound sense of resolve, Arthur made a decision as sharp as the setting sun outside. He would cancel all wedding arrangements, severing the financial lifeline that had inadvertently allowed Chloe to manipulate him. Yes, the cancellation would come at a steep price, a loss of non-refundable deposits that had already been made, but it appeared to be a necessary sacrifice for the lessons that Chloe needed to confront. He pictured her face when she learned that the wedding she had excitedly planned would not take place. Could this wake her up to reality? He drew a deep breath, feeling the weight of his choice settle in. "I will do it," he finally voiced, the authority in his words surprising even himself. "Chloe needs to understand the implications of her actions. I love her, but she must learn that love does not mean allowing her to hurt us." Alara watched him, her expression a mixture of pride and grief. "You know this might push her away further," she cautioned gently, "but it could also be the wake-up call she needs." Arthur nodded thoughtfully, aware that he was choosing a path fraught with emotional peril. He would allow her to keep her wedding dress and accessories. It was vital that Chloe would not catch wind of the entire cancellation too soon. He wanted her to feel the weight of her choice, to experience the harsh reality that her actions carried consequences. At 26, she was no child. It was time for her to learn what it meant to stand on her own. As Arthur settled back onto the couch, he felt an odd mixture of sadness and determination. The days to come would be challenging. With thoughts swirling in his mind, he began to mentally outline the logistics of the cancellation, first contacting the wedding planner, then the caterers, and finally the venue itself. He knew, however, that this decision was about more than just those logistical details. It was about claiming his own emotional sovereignty. When the phone rang, he felt a lump form in his throat as he glanced at the screen, seeing the name of Dominic, the wedding planner. Swallowing hard, he answered the call, summoning a sense of calm determination. "Dominic, we need to talk about Chloe's wedding." I am canceling all arrangements." Though he felt apprehensive, Arthur spoke clearly, standing firm in the decision he had resolved to make. Inside, his heart felt heavy, as if he were living in a nightmare, but he would not allow fear to dictate the course of his actions. This was no longer about appeasing his daughter or shielding her from the consequences of her choices. Whatever impact this would have on Chloe's emotional state was secondary to teaching her a valuable lesson, one crafted out of love and necessity, albeit one decorated with heartache. With every word he exchanged with Dominic, he allowed himself to envision a future where Chloe would begin to understand the depth of her actions amidst the chaos. As the call came to a close, a painful and necessary clarity settled over him. The clouds of turmoil that had shrouded him began to lift, clearing the way for a difficult but resolute hope. If nothing else, this would mark the beginning of a painful but transformative journey, a step towards salvaging not just his relationship with Chloe, but perhaps also toward finding healing for himself as well. As the sun rose on what was meant to be a day of celebration, there was an unmistakable tension in the air, an air that felt more like a storm brewing than the lightness of a wedding morning. Chloe sat in her ornate hotel suite, adorned in a breathtaking wedding dress, unaware that everything she had meticulously planned was on the brink of collapse. It was the kind of moment she had dreamed about, the kind of moment that should have filled her heart with joy and eager anticipation. Instead, an insidious chaos was about to unfold around her. As the hours passed, guests began to arrive at the picturesque vineyard, each stepping out of their cars with the hope of witnessing Chloe and Owen's love story come to life. The crisp morning air was filled with laughter and connection as cousins dusted off old memories and friends reunited after what felt like an eternity. But for everyone involved, a gnawing anxiety was building. Where was the bride? Deep within the vineyard's picturesque scenery, the clock struck 12, and with it came a wave of confusion. Two men in dark suits from the venue approached Owen, concern etched on their faces. "I am terribly sorry, but we need to discuss the event," one of them said, glancing around to see Chloe's family and friends mingling just outside. Owen felt a sinking sensation in the pit of his stomach as the reality began to settle. "What do you mean?" he implored, sensing the growing tension. The man swallowed hard before continuing. "The wedding has been canceled by the primary financial guarantor. We cannot permit entry." A gasp rippled through the gathered crowd. Whispers began to circulate as the laughter faded into nervous murmurs. All eyes turned toward Owen, whose face contorted in confusion and disbelief. He fought to regain composure while a storm brewed within him. "I need to speak with Chloe," he demanded, bolting towards the venue entrance, but the staff stood firm, barring his way. Meanwhile, inside the hotel, Chloe was blissfully unaware until the frantic texts began flooding her phone, each one more panicked than the last. "Where are you? The venue staff are saying it has been canceled. What is happening?" She dismissed the messages with a wave of uncertainty surging through her. Surely they were mistaken. But as her phone buzzed again with another alert, she grew increasingly agitated, her anxiety quickly morphing into frustration. Finally, with every ounce of determination, she threw open the door of her suite and sped towards the venue. The vibrant floral decor that should have greeted her now felt like a hollow reminder of what was meant to be an unforgettable day. When she arrived, all she saw were guests, confusion, and an air of disbelief surrounding her beloved wedding party. Then, in a whirlwind of chaos, she learned the full extent of Arthur's drastic decision. As tears burned in her eyes, feeling the magnitude of all that had evaporated, she rushed to the entrance, but security stood as an impenetrable wall. "What is going on?" she cried, demanding clarity. "Let me in. This is my wedding." But as reality began to sink in, her gallant pleas fell on deaf ears. Protocol prohibited anyone from entering the venue. Just as the mood dipped into utter despair, a voice rang out from behind. It was Owen, his expression a stark reflection of hurt and disbelief. "Chloe, please let us talk," he urged, attempting to bridge the chasm that had opened between them. But any remnants of logic quickly faded as they began to spiral into an argument, a desperate interplay of emotions and disappointments. As tensions escalated, frustrated voices filled the air. A series of arguments erupted among the bridal party, each one voicing the unthinkable. "This cannot be happening. Why would you allow this? How could you cancel the wedding?" The calls of frustration reverberated across the once glorious vineyard, transforming the atmosphere from jubilant celebration to frantic chaos. In this moment of disarray, Chloe's anger boiled over. "This is all my father's fault," she screamed, her words slicing through the confusion like a dagger. Present company fell silent, eyes wide with shock, but no one dared speak. It was apparent to all that the real fracture lay deep within the fabric of a family torn apart by years of misunderstanding and resentment. Within the walls of Arthur's home, another atmosphere was unfolding. He sat in agonizing silence, alternating between guilt and resolve. Outside, the wind whistled softly as he absorbed the aftermath of his action, one he believed was necessary. He had anticipated chaos on this day, yet could not shake the profound sorrow knowing he and Chloe were now irreparably fractured. Thoughts swirled around him, each one layered with questions of whether he had taken the right course of action and whether this would ultimately cost him his daughter's love. Chloe's phone buzzed incessantly that day, her digital access cutting away each path back to her father. Calls went unanswered, and text notifications fell silent as Arthur's emotional wall fortified. What remained were scattered moments of panic and rage, a young woman yearning for the support she had constantly felt deprived of, left to float alone amid a sea of disappointment on what should have been her special day. And as Arthur reflected on what he deemed an act of tough love, he painfully acknowledged the paradox that in his desire to teach Chloe about accountability, he had inadvertently carved a deeper chasm. Today was not only a wedding day lost, it was a reflection of two lives severed by the scars of the past, intertwined with choice, consequence, and a heartbreaking mix of love and resentment. In the heart of a broken family, Chloe Hayes represents a complex tapestry woven from threads of love, abandonment, pain, and resentment. As Arthur sits quietly in his suburban living room, the memories of his daughter's tumultuous childhood flood his mind like a river that refuses to be dammed. He had always tried to be a good father, stepping up after Chloe's biological mother vanished into the ether of Europe, seeking a more bohemian existence. Chloe was just 8 years old when her mother left, shattering the family unit and leaving Arthur to pick up the pieces as a single parent. For years, he tirelessly balanced work and parenting, pouring all that he had into raising the little girl who would soon come to adopt a fierce protective wall around her emotions. He would reminisce about their time spent together, the late-night story sessions, the art projects that cluttered their dining table, and the quiet moments they shared while watching movies on rainy afternoons. But those moments were sporadic and interlaced with the chaos that came with Chloe's adolescence. Chloe had always been an artistic soul, much like her mother. She had an eye for design and an affinity for creativity that was evident from an early age. However, her struggles with discipline and focus manifested in a string of difficulties that would ultimately culminate in her chaotic high school experience. Arthur remembers the dread he felt each time he received a call from the school about another incident. This time it was shoplifting, prompting him to send her to live with her Aunt Vivienne. Yet that arrangement quickly failed due to Chloe's defiance and manipulative behavior, leaving Arthur to face another tumultuous chapter in his parenting journey. Returning to live with Arthur did not mark the end of her struggles. Chloe fell in with a crowd that only magnified her self-destructive behaviors, leading her down a path filled with drugs, instability, and a string of broken relationships. The boyfriends came and went, but Arthur remained steadfast enrolling her in a prestigious design school despite her chaotic high school record. He saw flickers of potential in her, hoping that through his support she might eventually find her footing. Yet it was not just Chloe's choices that haunted Arthur, it was the shadow of her mother's abandonment that loomed large over their relationship. Every time they clashed, every argument that erupted, it felt as if Chloe was not just confronting her father, but also battling the weight of the emptiness left by an absent maternal figure. Arthur, despite his best efforts, often found himself feeling like a second-rate parent in the harsh light of her resentment. When he married Alara, a woman whose calm demeanor and successful career in landscape design seemed like the balm Chloe needed, he naively hoped for reconciliation. Alara's attempts to connect with Chloe were met with ice-cold stares and harsh words. In Chloe's eyes, Alara was not a loving stepmother, but rather an intruder, an unwelcome reminder of the life that had been disrupted by her mother's departure. As Arthur recalls his daughter's countless struggles, he comes to terms with a profound belief. Chloe's resentment stemmed not only from having lost her mother, but also from the deep-seated fear of being abandoned once more. Every time Arthur tried to guide her, it registered as control. Every ounce of support felt like another debt to pay, deepening the chasm between them. Chloe's fury often manifested in accusations laced with bitterness, which she rehashed during their climactic confrontation. He was always picking Alara's side and never truly supported her artistic vision. Yet Arthur could only shake his head in despair. He fought to articulate to her the years of unwavering support he had provided. His sacrifices were meant to offer her a better future, to pull her from the depths of her struggles, and to ensure that she never felt the pain of abandonment that he had experienced. However, Chloe was entrenched in her narrative. She stubbornly clung to the belief that she deserved more, echoing her mother's footsteps by creating chaos in her life out of a misguided hope for authenticity. Despite everything they had endured as a family, Chloe's path diverged from what Arthur had envisioned for her. What remained was a daughter who felt overshadowed and overlooked, dissecting her wrongs and refusing to receive the love she so desperately needed. Arthur's heart ached at the thought that perhaps he had enabled her sense of entitlement, allowing her to perceive support as a currency rather than an expression of love. But as he sat alone, reflecting on years filled with both cherished memories and profound pain, he realized he had no control over her journey. Despite his efforts, Chloe's path might lead to self-destruction, an echo of the instability that began with her mother's departure. The cruel irony was that this cycle of abandonment and resentment had formed a legacy that Arthur might not be able to break. His thoughts were interrupted by Alara's gentle hand on his shoulder, a reminder that amidst the fractures and struggles, some connections were worth cherishing. Together they looked forward with cautious hope, wishing for a reconciliation that might one day bridge the divide between father and daughter before it became a void too vast to cross. Thank you for watching. A Fractured Legacy. If this story resonated with you or sparked emotions of your own, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Remember, family relationships can be complex, filled with layers of love and tension. If you found value in this narrative, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with anyone who might benefit from this emotional journey. Do not forget to subscribe for more stories that explore the intricacies of life, love, and family. Until next time, take care and cherish those precious connections in your life.